This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, good morning. This is September 23rd, 9 o'clock, and this is our meeting today, our business to discuss business issues, and then also talk from the start. We're going to talk about dealing with difficult situations in our real estate, and these are some true life stories that have happened over the last few months. And I want to share these with you, and I hope you guys feel free to step up and share your experiences as well. So, and feel free, give and take. I'm going to ask some questions, so hopefully you guys will have some responses. So I have up here put together on a Word doc a couple of situations. First of all, this first one, we represent the seller in this transaction. So we hit the market and multiple offers came in on the listing in the first week. Our seller, who was a very challenging client, said they were going to be out of town for an undetermined number of days, looking for a replacement property in a new city, meeting with out-of-state friends, agents in an area of poor cell reception, and forgot to bring their laptop away from their computer and not be available for calls at any set time. Then they changed the times when they were going to return. So again, a really challenging client. Now, the listing agent stayed in touch with the buyer's agents multiple times, people who were showing this property, and told them the information about where the seller was and how they were challenging to get a hold of. But what she did was she forwarded all the offers to the seller as they came in and briefly discussed with the seller what they decided to do. In this scenario, once the second offer came in, the seller decided, hey, I'm happy with this offer, I'm just going to accept it. So we had received an offer already from another agent, and our broker told the agent the first offer, when that was submitted, that other agents had said they were going to submit offers, but she hadn't received anything yet. So in this scenario, that broker was expecting to be notified, but never had said that, and our agent never said that either. Then once the first agent to have submitted the offer, found out that the seller had accepted the second offer, and that agent who had submitted the first offer basically got very, very upset, sent our broker a lot of nasty emails and texts, criticizing, insulting, intimidating, said they didn't like the way this was handled because the agent had stayed in touch and wanted to know if another offer came in that was higher so they could submit a higher offer. That agent also accused our agent of misrepresenting the seller, not working in our seller's best interest, and that also said that the buyer's offer was used to bump up another offer, which was unethical. That's what they said. And again, our listing agent told the buyer's agent the seller had decided they didn't want to go back and forth in multiple offers, were happy with the current second offer, and didn't want to risk using it, and moved on with the process. So in this scenario, we have that broker who represented the first offer, who got very upset that they weren't given the opportunity to adjust their offer. But again, we have a seller challenging seller, didn't want to play that game and just went with the second offer that came in. So given this situation, how would you guys have responded to this? Any takers on it? Feel free to unmute your mic and just let me know what your thoughts are. Any ideas here? Anyone have anything to share?
Linnea?
Yes. Hi, Kathy.
I would have done the multiple offer form regardless that Ben Premier has, and just even if you didn't get the seller to sign it, you as the listing agent would have notified the buyer's agent in writing, and then had that to present to the seller regardless of what the seller decided to do.
That's one option. But what do you do when the seller says they're not available to discuss things, or that they have sketchy cell service and they don't want to play the multiple offer game? What do you do in a situation like that, Kathy? And could you speak a little closer to your mic because it's hard to hear you?
Okay. I think it sounds like the listing agent did everything correctly. They notified the buyer's agent. They had another offer. It's totally up to the seller what they decide to do, and just put it in an email, to them, what the decision was and why.
Right. And I have to say, in our brokerage, I've talked to a lot of our brokers who represented buyers in scenarios like this, and they're very disappointed that their client never was given that opportunity to modify their offer. However, it doesn't change the fact that it's seller's choice about what they want to do. And even though we may counsel our seller that, we could go back and ask for highest and best, we can let everyone know there's multiple offers. Does anyone want to modify their offer? It is ultimately our seller's choice. So how would any of you handle the agent on the other side who is being really belligerent and accusing our client of being unethical?
This sounds so frustrating, but ultimately you are right. It's the seller's choice, and if the seller is away, or whatever the scenario is that the seller can't come to the table, he's leaving the transaction and the negotiation up to his trusted professional. And when he says he would prefer the second offer, that's it. So kindly respond to that other agent. Take the higher road, as kind as you can. Say, this is the scenario, this is what he accepted, and this is it. We did our best to communicate, and that's it. That's all there is, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's a great response, Danielle. Colleen, do you have an idea there?
Oh, I didn't realize I unclicked it. I have a lot of agents saying these days, just bring your best and highest at the get-go.
Right.
And that kind of covers what might happen in the future if they're not sure what the seller might do. But bring your best and highest at the outset.
That's a great idea. And I would always suggest that with a market as crazy as it is right now. What about the idea of offering, with your offer right from the start, an escalation clause on the off chance someone else comes in? What do you think about that? I mean, yeah, Danielle, do you have an idea? Oh.
I did submit an escalation clause with an offer recently. It was rejected for some. He never said why it was rejected. He never gave me, but it was rejected. So, but I think that's a great idea, and I've been preparing clients to, this is not a negotiation market right now. Come in at full price at least. Best and highest that you would like to pay for the property, that you're comfortable paying for the property.
Right. Catherine, do you have an idea too?
Yeah, well, over the summer I had written 3 offers with escalation clauses, one, I think at least 3, and we got the deal in. One was rejected, I think, because both offers were not probably what the sellers wanted. So she didn't tell me that, the agent didn't tell me that, so they just rejected the escalation clause. But in the other 2 scenarios, we were able to get the deal with using the escalation clause.
And did your client overpay them for the property at all? Do you think they could have gotten it if they didn't write with an escalation clause right from the start?
No, I think that the escalation clause is what won the deal for them.
Perfect. Okay.
Actually, I know. Yeah.
You do know that for a fact. Yeah.
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, does anyone else have something to contribute to this scenario here?
Yes, my deal went through because we went all cash and we went higher than list price by enough that if it were a loan, it might not have appraised.
Yeah.
But my clients liked the home enough and saw the window of opportunity for that home appreciating anyway, that they knew up front about the not getting the appraisal would help them too. So that's one angle to work it. And then I'm noticing lately that everything's moving so quickly that a lot of them are sellers agents are putting in a listing no escalation clauses. So they just want to get those deals reviewed and picked and done. Right. And if that nasty other realtor didn't have an attitude problem, she'd realize it's a real life situation now that people are moving quickly. And if you didn't put in your highest and best, the seller's going to move on to the next one. So just a note to look in the notes and notice that a lot of them are saying, listing agents are now saying no escalation clauses.
Right, right. I mean, kind of along the same line, we had another situation this summer in which we represented a seller who had said that they were going to entertain all offers on a specific date. And we had a bunch of offers coming in at that point. And as the offers were coming in, our listing agent was presenting them to the seller. And it just so happened when one came in, the seller said, I absolutely love this one. This is the one I wanted to have, period. Signed it, accepted it, and was done. Even though it wasn't by the deadline that was advertised initially. Now, agents who didn't yet submit their offer accused our agent of being unethical and disruptive and not honoring what they had said. That was a tough situation. And how would you guys have handled something like that? Thoughts on that? Yeah. Jane, you have an idea?
You know, I've been in this situation on both sides before, and it's always super difficult to deal with other agents when they've lost the deal. But I always try and keep the communication open as much as possible along with my seller. And if the seller looks like they're going to be accepting another offer, I've always asked, can you give me a reason for denying this one so I can explain it to the agent? And that way, it's not just, we've accepted another offer, forget about yours. At least I can give them an explanation, whether it's a good one or not, but I'm just, I apologize and say it's come directly from the seller.
Right, right. I mean, and that's what our agents decided to do. I mean, called all the agents who had offered and said, you know, sorry about this. Our seller changed their mind, decided they wanted to accept this offer that came in. It was really good for them. And in one case, we had an agent on the other side accuse our listing agent of being unethical, said every offer that came in should not have been presented, should have been stuck in a envelope, and then all presented on the date that our seller has said it was going to happen. You know, look at all of them.
No,
Kathy?
This is Katie talking. I didn't find that situation unethical on our listing agent's behalf, or on Ben Premier's listing agent's behalf. I mean, ultimately, your client, the seller, sets kind of how they want to go about the situation. And regardless, whether the listing agent waited to receive all the offers and present them at the same time or presented them one by one, at the end of the day, it sounds like the seller was going to pick that offer. So, I mean, that's kind of how I feel about it.
Yeah, it's a tough thing. And I think the word going forward on that given situation would be to remind our seller that, you know, we said all those offers were going to come in on, you were going to look at them all on this day. And if you're just changing your mind, realize it is a change to what you had already said you were going to do. It's going to put us all in a very difficult scenario, plus potentially deny you the opportunity to give even a stronger offer. But it's ultimately their choice. Yeah, Kathy, did you have some idea there too?
I do, Linnea, and you shared this with me before, and I think it was what Kate did, and I had 9 offers come in on a property this year, and my seller was not available in Hell's Canyon, so we put a timeline and a date, and we stuck to that timeline and date, and I put them all on an Excel sheet without the buyer's agent or the company, and sent it to the sellers before we met at the office and went through all 9 offers, you know, in person, but they had already decided which offer they would pick and which one they wanted to put in backup. And to me, a timeline's a timeline. Obviously, I think that's where the issue came up on this case. If I was told I had to have an offer in by 10 o'clock today, I would have it in by 10 o'clock. I don't think it was fair to the other people to have an offer come in after the timeline, and that got accepted. So that's just my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, that's a valid point there too, Kathy. Absolutely. In a scenario like this crazy market, I think it's very important that we have discussions with our sellers right from the start and let them know, guys, we may get multiples offers on this. We need to be upfront and have a game plan set up so that how we're going to entertain these offers. If we do get multiple offers, we may not, but if we do, let's figure this out and let's honor this and let's advertise it to the other agents so that way they will put their best offer in and hopefully get one that's really acceptable to you, seller, and maybe above asking price. I think that's a good way of handling it going forward. It's challenging. This is definitely challenging times.
Well, yeah, I agree. I think the conversation should be had with the seller when you list the property.
Right.
If multiple offers, how do you want to handle them? And give
Right.
us different options. And
Right.
then when the buyer's agent asks you, and I'll ask people, how are you going to handle it? Are you going to accept the first offer? Are you going to do highest and best?
Right.
Are you going to notify everyone that there's multiple offer? I mean, I think that is a fair question.
Right.
And if you know those answers as a listing agent, that will keep you out of trouble. If you say, my seller and I had this conversation and this is how the seller wants me to handle it. And then you tell everyone the same thing, or you put it in agent comments, and then you're covered.
It sounds like a plan there. Catherine, did you have something to say?
I have a question. I like what Kathy just said, and I was thinking about, I have a potential listing coming up. Would you recommend that, because I'm seeing a lot of sellers agents writing, offers will be reviewed on this day, and of course I'll have that conversation with my client if they want to have a certain time period before we review offers. Would you just suggest most listing agents just do that, even though the property might not receive multiple offers? Is it just a good idea in this market to have that just out of the gate?
I think having a game plan set up right from the start, in the chance that you do get multiple offers, and this market is still crazy, we may have multiple offers on a lot of properties. So having that game plan, having that discussion with your client, and then sticking with it, it really helps everyone be aware of the options and the opportunities that can come. And in the case of your seller, the chance that giving a deadline for offers to come in so that the other agents have that chance to put in their offer as well. I think it creates goodwill around for everybody. I really do.
Right.
I think it's a good situation. In our case here, this first scenario that we talked about, there was no discussion about how to handle multiple offers. Again, our seller was very challenging. And so when they're saying they're out of town, sketchy cell service, forgot their laptop, all that sort of stuff, the fact that our agent did the best she could by letting people know there's other people who are saying they're going to write offers, but we don't know that for a fact. When that first offer was written, that was the first offer. We hadn't any others. But when the second offer came in and our seller said, that's the one I want, I don't want to deal with anything else. Having a discussion with the seller that perhaps going back to that first offer and saying, we have another offer, do you want to modify, might have resulted in a stronger first offer, would have been potentially something that maybe the seller would have entertained. But in this case, like I said, the seller was a very challenging individual. So there's no set hard and fast rule how to do it, but at least having that conversation so that that seller is aware of their options. Again, they make the rules, they make those decisions about what offer they want to accept. Anything else on this first scenario before I move on to the second one?
I just had a question. When you have a bunch of multiple offers and you're representing the seller, Do most agents want a formal rejection, or is it okay to just let the time lapse?
Personally, I think it's always nice to at least sign the last page with a rejection so that that agent who and their client who took the time to write an offer at least gets something back in writing. At a minimum, if your seller is not willing to do that, at least notifying them all, by saying that our seller elected just to let your offer expire. And that way they have something in writing that they can give to their buyer. I always think it's best to sign if you can, but if you can't, if the client doesn't want to do it, notifying people is just common courtesy.
Right.
I agree with you on that. I think what's aggravating to most buyers agents today is that they set a timeline and they hear nothing.
Yeah.
Right? Or
right.
At least respond and tell people thank you for your offer. Good offer. I know Colleen was one of the 9 on my one listing, and we talked about it, and talked about the plan. I mean, there are good offers all over the board, but it's up to the seller what they decide. And if they decide to take an offer because the buyer waives, the buyer's agent buyer waives the home inspection, and they're concerned about that, then share that with the other people, right? I mean, then they're not questioning, gee, I don't understand. My offer was 10,000 over, or whatever. Tell them why. And do respond. We responded to all 9 offers. I had another one where we had 6. We responded to all 6. And I think that's important today. It's the ones that aren't responding that your buyer gets really upset because they haven't heard by the timeline and then they hear nothing.
Right. And that's very frustrating when you're representing a buyer. It is without a doubt among the most, it's like, we made an offer. What happened to it? Where is it? It's challenging times for people in a market that's as strong as this. And it's common courtesy. It is just to let the other side know what happened.
And it can also create mistrust with your own buyer because you're representing them. You're trying to find out. You can't find out. And then they're kind of going, oh, well, why can't they find out? Right. So I think it's really important to let the other side know.
And Colleen, to answer your question.
I've always let people know. I just didn't know if you have 10 offers, if you need to get 10 contracts, in writing.
I think it's always a good thing. But, Colleen, what you said also about timelines makes sense too. Here's another situation we had this summer. We represented a buyer on a transaction, and they came in first, wrote a really strong offer with a deadline on it. The listing agent ignored that and then finally came back, said, well, they're getting more offers and our seller's going to entertain other offers up through a certain date. So our client, who was the buyer in the situation, just so happened another listing hit the market that was even better for them. They jumped on that immediately because their offer had expired and ended up getting in contract on this new listing right away. Because again, they wrote a really strong offer. And in that case, that seller was willing just to take whatever was, a strong offer right from the start. The offer they had written on for the house number 1, that listing agent came back to them and said, okay, looks like our seller's really interested in your offer. And our agent had to come back and say, sorry, they moved on to something else. That's always the risk you run when you're representing a buyer or a seller who it goes back to the multiple offer scenario and wanting to get a bidding war going. You run the risk of losing the best offer right from the start. So it was not advertised that they were going to entertain all offers on a specific date. Our buyer's agent wrote a really strong offer over asking price. And again, it ended up probably being the best offer, but that seller lost out. So those are the risks that you run on that situation. Let's move on to our scenario number 2. So in this,
Linnea,
yeah.
I have a quick question about kind of a buyer situation in that. So say there's a timeline that the listing agent is presenting, and generally I feel like lately it's been 48 to 72 hours. But I have come across a few that are have like a 4 to 5 day window where
Yep.
they're doing showings and then reviewing the offers.
Yes.
So say our clients or our buyers are touring that home the first day it's on the market, or even before it's on the market, they submit the offer. And at that point, they're waiting 5 to 7 days to know if they got accepted or not.
Right.
And in that time frame, you know, so many other homes will potentially can come available that fit what they're looking for.
Right.
So, I mean, how would you play that if they had an offer in, but they really liked that house, but then another home came available and they really liked that one too? And, you know, it's kind of up in the air if you're going to get the home right now because of so many offers being at the table.
Right.
So, I mean, at that point, if say the offers weren't being reviewed until, say like Sunday at 5 p.m., would you suggest like waiting to submit the offer like Sunday morning and waiting it out to see if anything else comes up, or submitting it like right away after you see the home?
You asked a lot right there, Katie. Those are tricky scenarios. First of all, recognize that your buyer should be only offering on one house at a time if that's all they truly can afford to buy. So say that they think that they want to play, I don't think I'm going to get this house, so I'm going to offer on this other house, hoping that my first offer is not accepted. Yes, there's outs in every real estate transaction. However, they are also authorizing when they sign that document that they have liquid and available funds per the terms that they're writing to be able to move forward on that purchase. So if their offer ends up being accepted by both sellers, they're running the risk of, you know, behaving in this case, the buyer is behaving in an unethical manner. And if we're representing them in that scenario, we are actually contributing to someone who's doing something unethical, which is bad, is terrible. In the case of your scenario there, say they wrote an offer as soon as it hit the market, and they left the timeline for a response very open. Say that 5-day time frame. If they find something else that hits the market that suits them better, I would put in an addendum saying they're withdrawing their offer, and then write on the other property. However, if they want to wait until the last day before they put their offer in, they do run the risk of that seller accepting another offer, just like happened in our scenario here, even though they said they're going to entertain those offers. So it's a tough one. It's really a tough one. What do? You give them their options and you tell them this is what could happen. This is what we're typically seeing. We're usually seeing that most sellers are honoring those deadlines they're giving, saying they're going to entertain all offers on Sunday at 5. Most of them are, but every now and then something could happen that they get a better some offer that they decide they want to accept. So you run the risk of losing this offer. So I don't have a really hard and fast answer, Katie. I really don't. Does anyone else have ideas that they want to contribute?
I have a question on that addendum. So what if they send an addendum saying we would like to pull out of our offer and the other side pretends like they never received it? If you don't get a signature back, isn't that a little open-ended?
Well, actually, because you don't have a ratified contract yet, all you're doing is modifying your offer and saying we are withdrawing our offer. So that's a unilateral, it's a unilateral withdrawing. And if the seller ends up accepting that offer, you come back and say, no, we submitted this addendum to you. It was sent to your agent and we withdrew our offer.
So even if it's not ratified on both sides, it's still valid.
Right, because the offer was never ratified. You don't have a binding contract yet. So all you're doing through that addendum is withdrawing your offer.
No, I got that. I just wasn't sure if the seller didn't sign, if you were in trouble or not.
No, you're not. All you're doing is modifying your offer, just like throwing in an escalation clause or modifying your purchase price because you've heard there's multiple offers. You're modifying your offer. Even though the seller hasn't accepted it, you're just changing what you're offering. So in that case,
as long as you send the email, that's proof. But another thing I think we don't use enough of, especially if you're dealing with the
Kathy, I still can't hear you. Could you get a little bit closer to your mic?
Yeah, it's a newer computer. I'm not sure even where the mic is. But, read receipts, a great way to go. or just the fact that you sent the email should be proof. You know, but you can always ask them to confirm receipt or send read receipt, and that way you know they've received your email saying that you want to withdraw your offer. Call them, text them, do whatever, and then you have proof.
Yes. And I agree. If you don't hear response back, send multiple ways, email, phone call, lots of different ways, and make a notation about that. So that way you have protected your client from getting a contract on 2 properties. You guys ready to go on to the next scenario here? Okay, here's scenario number 2. This is the same seller, and you already told you this seller was challenging. So at the point of the time of getting the listing, the seller told our listing agent that they were going to do some repairs and replace a partly damaged door. So the listing agent then told the buyer, who ended up in contract on the property while viewing the home, that the seller had told them they were going to replace the door. And then the buyer's agent, when they were doing the repair addendum, noted that the seller is going to replace the door as stated by the listing agent when the buyer viewed the home. Now, the seller then changed their mind, got a bid for replacing the door, but there was a suggestion from the contractor that rather than replace the door, you could probably repair it. And, you know, so they decided they're not going to repair it. They're only going to repair it, not replace it, and give credit for the door and other repairs. And so they weren't going to do anything. And then when discussing with the buyer and the seller's repair counteroffer addendums, the buyer's agent said the listing agent should never have told her buyer that the seller would replace the door, and that the seller should never have changed her mind. And then if the seller misrepresented what they were going to do, then the buyer's agent called our listing agent a liar. And then the buyer's agent told if the seller's not going to replace the door and only repair it, the listing agent should pay for the new door. And again, the listing agent told the buyer's agent that's what the seller told her they were going to do, but they did change their mind. They're allowed to change their mind, as it was verbal and only counts it was agreed to in the contract. Any thoughts about that? Again, challenging seller.
Is this the same buyer's agent?
Yes,
That was
same
before?
And this is different. No, this was not. This was the buyer's agent. This was the offer number 2, the buyer's agent who got the transaction, not the buyer's agent who lost the transaction. This is the one who got it. Again, a lot of tough situations in this, and I would say a lot of these problems were caused by our seller. Really challenging seller, but
Okay.
still.
It does.
I don't have much respect for somebody that's calling the other a liar. That's my thoughts.
That's a really strong thing to say. I mean, you're representing what your seller had told you they were going to do, and then the seller changed her mind. Dane, do you have something here?
Yes, it says that they were going to replace the door and give credit for the door and other repairs.
No, they elected, instead of replacing the door, they decided, we're just going to give you credit instead.
And to me, I would explain that to, if I was a buyer's agent, I would explain it to the buyer as saying, you know what, that even works out better. You can choose your own door now.
True. Yeah. And it is
on it, not the negative.
Yeah, it's how you spin it too. I agree.
Yeah.
That buyer's agent could have turned it into a positive rather than being a negative.
Absolutely.
And Linnea, you know, that buyer's agent should also realize that nothing was in writing, so no one's lying. Until it's in writing, then it's shown.
Yeah, it's not yet part of the ratified contract. The seller said they were going to do this. The seller elected, after they talked with the contractor, that the door could be repaired rather than replaced. Again, challenging seller. I've had other sellers who say, I said I was going to repair the door, replace the door. I'm going to replace the door regardless. But this person really, to get anything out of it, is hard. Yeah, Kathy, did you have something else?
Well, I'm just rereading it, and they're not offering a credit to replace it. He, the seller, if I'm correct, is only offering to repair it.
Right.
depending on what the door needs, it might be less expensive to replace the door than try to repair it, especially, you know, I don't know what kind of door it is, if it's a wooden door, if it needs to be sanded.
I believe it was an outside storage closet, and there was some damage, like water damage to the lower part of the door. And a repairman, a contractor said, well, you don't need to replace it, you just need a kick pan on the lower section of the door. So that was
it's not the interior door, it's not the front door, it's a storage door. I mean, I can't believe they couldn't reach an agreement on something like that, because that's minor in the in the scope of things. The fact that there were multiple offers, I tried to spin it just like was said before, that your offer was accepted. I'm sorry my seller changed their mind. They had a contractor look at it. This is what the contractor recommended. It's a storage door. You know, can't we make this work?
Yeah. Yeah. It's coming across with some authority and saying that, look, my seller changed their mind. They had an expert look at it, said it doesn't need to be replaced, it just needs to be repaired, and this is how it could be repaired. So it's tough, and again, challenging sellers. We have so many sellers in this market right now. It's like my way or the highway. I'm dictating terms because I can. I have multiple offers in place, and I'm not going to do any repairs, period. It's challenging, definitely. But in this case,
the other thing that I had done when a seller said, this is what I had them send me an email, and then I forwarded that email to the buyer's agent. And that way the buyer's agent knows it's not you, you know, that is making the decision. And, you know, for them to call, you know, the listing agent a liar, that's really unethical. And then to request that they pay for the door, but get an email in writing from the seller and send it to them. And at that point, they can either go forward with the deal or not. They had multiple offers, hopefully one's in backup. And you know, honestly, if someone's going to be that challenging to work with about a storage door, good grief, the rest of the transaction could be a nightmare too. So, you know, they do have the right to disapprove and, you know, move on. So that's what I would suggest.
It's also the thought here that in however we deal with clients and brokers on the other side of a transaction, maintaining a professional demeanor is so appropriate. For calling people names, that is so wrong. We don't do that. We just have to do the best we can of representing our clients and say, look, my seller changed their mind after talking with a contractor. And Kathy, I like your idea of having the seller put it in writing, though I don't think we could ever get our seller to do that in this situation. She was challenging. But still, it's a great idea to see if they would put that in writing. And if you let them know, look, we let the buyer know that you were going to replace it. You're changing your mind. Would you mind putting that in writing to me so that the agent who represents the buyer knows it's coming from you, not from me? I'll wipe out your contact information so they won't go directly to you, but I just want to share your words. That's a good idea. That's a very good idea. Okay, if nothing else on this one, let's go on to one more, which I wanted to share with you. That was probably the one to end all of this summer that I've dealt with. In this case, we had a seller who, again, a different seller, this one. The seller entered into contract to sell his home. He received an offer that was above asking price and also offered $10,000 in moving costs paid and no inspection items to repair. So it was a super, super strong offer. Now we knew our seller wanted to have, needed a replacement property, and so was counseled throughout the course of this transaction. Do you want us to write a counter offer that your acceptance of this offer is contingent upon finding a replacement property? And he said, no, I have it already identified. I'm ready to move on it. So no issue. And again, counseled multiple times on it. Accepted the offer. Well, it just so happened that the replacement property he was going to get ended up not being acceptable. And so he had no replacement property after all. And so he came back to us and said, I'm killing the deal. And was told, no, you can't kill the deal. We're sorry about that, but you are in contract. He said, okay, well, I will pay the other side $5,000 to go away. So we brought that to the buyer's agent, and the buyer's agent said, absolutely not acceptable to the buyer. The buyer is in contract. They're already out of their house. They need this house. They're moving in. They're not letting the seller out of the transaction. We all know the outs are all with the buyer in a real estate transaction, not with the seller. And this seller was probably the most challenging person we ever dealt with. I mean, I talked with them. I talked with a friend of his. We counseled him all the way through. He accepted the fact that our agent probably asked him 10 times, do you want this written into a counter offer that your acceptance is contingent upon successfully closing on a replacement property? Our listing agent did her job. Well, the seller, again, he's one of those characters who has a very I know better than you attitude, and was, no, I know better than you, and I'm fine with it. And it ended up being really bad. I ended up talking with the agent on the other side, principal broker on the other side, working through this. We all understood that our seller did not have an out. We all understand that. Our seller was willing, to offer money to make the buyer go away, but ultimately, we finally ended up successfully closing on this property, and now the seller is out of state, which I'm glad for Oregon he's out of state because another state can take him on. But it was really challenging. So situations like this are the things that I have to get involved in, guys, because our broker did everything right. They really did. Any comments about this? If not, just realize in this market, we are dealing with difficult clients. Agents on the other side of transactions are sometimes not behaving in a professional manner. That doesn't change the fact we always need to be professional, meaning a sense of decorum, a sense of professionalism, letting people understand our seller makes the choice. Our buyer, we work on their behalf. We advise, we help them through their transaction, but it's ultimately their choice about what they want to do. It is challenging, definitely. If not, I want to touch some on what happened at the business issues meeting yesterday. There was some really important things discussed at this. First of all, we had Steve Strode, who's the real estate commissioner there. He gave a report. Believe it or not, we are up 300 brokers over a year ago. So there's more brokers in this market today than there were last year. 300 more across the state. It's roughly 16,000. What's the figure? 16,000. I'll get the actual figure here. Here we go. 16,626 brokers, whereas last year was 16,316. Principal brokers, 6,381. Last year, 6,443. So a few fewer principal brokers. Property managers, roughly the same. And so a total licensees across the state round, just under 24,000 licensees across the state, which I always think is interesting. We then had a guy who came in talking about mortgage lending, this is important for you to hear about this. There's $3 trillion in mortgages for 2020. This is 50% more than ever before. So last year was a phenomenal year for mortgage lending. at 1.5 trillion being written in mortgages. But this year, 3 trillion, and of which 2 refinances for every loan. Think about where mortgage rates are right now, under 3%. There are massive numbers of refinances. And so that's why when you're dealing with your lender, it's really important to talk about their timeline. Rush files are hard to accommodate, really challenging right now. And then jumbo loan products are back. Remember when COVID first hit, they were all gone. They are back, but it's limited to people with really, really excellent credit ratings. There's also some challenges right now with self-employed people getting some loans here. They also said that forbearance is down 7.4% from 10% once COVID first hit. So that's positive. Next speaker was Jim Baumberger. He's with Appraisals. And again, we still have the appraisal flexibility with COVID, which means drive-by, table appraisals, not necessarily moving into the homes. That's still there. There are issues, though, with timing. Remember, we have a shortage of appraisers across the state. Right now, they're saying it's 8 to 12 days once an appraisal hits before they're picked up in the metro areas. So that means when the appraisals go out there from the lenders, an appraiser has to pick them up. In metro area, it takes 8 to 12 days before they're picked up. So if there's a timeline issue with your buyer, and say they've maximized their opportunity to purchase by saying we're going to get our loan done in 30 days, and your lender's saying it can be done in 30 days, delaying the appraisal till after the home inspection may not be the smartest thing if we really have to close that quick. So having that discussion with your client and your lender is real important. So again, 8 to 12 days to pick up in a metro area usually would work for most loans that are 30 to 45 days, but there's questions on that. But in rural areas and complex appraisals, it's anywhere from 3 to 5 weeks before an appraiser will pick up that appraisal. And recognize that for every appraisal that an appraiser is offered, they decline about 15. And they'll decline them for all kinds of things, such as, well, I'll accept this one that's giving me more money. So I've never heard of this before, but this was like eye-opening to all of us. Asking your lender how competitive their fee is. This appraiser here, Jim Baumberger, said that there are some people who are using lenders out of another state in which the appraisal fee is $400 to $500. Yeah. They're saying that the appraisal fee is $400 to $500. In our market, a competitive loan appraisal is about $1,200. Yeah, who is that? Someone have something to comment? No? Okay. Anyway, so realize and asking your lender how competitive is their appraisal fee. Again, never heard that before. And so if there's a rush for your client to get their loan done as quickly as possible, finding out what the fee is, not the fee that they charge the borrower, but the fee that they actually pay the appraiser. That's important, and to recognize, an appraiser is going to pick up a loan that's going to give them more money. It makes common sense. There's also something that is delaying appraisals by 1 to 2 days right now as based upon the wildfires and FEMA disaster. In that case, they have to receive a certification that the home that they're doing their loan on was not impacted by the wildfires. So that's delaying appraisals by 1 to 2 days. So that's something we're dealing with right now. Moving on to title, same thing is true for title as it was with loans. Very, very busy in title with refinances. There's 150% of refinances than there were last year at this time, and they're dealing with the same number of new deals. But there's fewer people staffing the offices. They said with COVID, initially some people were laid off, and with the extra $600 that they were getting from the federal unemployment, there was a lot of disincentive for them to go back to work. So they were getting paid more to be unemployed than they were to be working. Now that's changed, so hopefully more people are back to work, but they're having issues with staffing in the title company. I know an awful lot of our preliminary title reports are very delayed. We're used to getting them very quickly, and in some cases they're really slow in getting out there. So that's something to think about. I know that our title officers are super, super busy. I'm also seeing some of them making mistakes that they normally didn't make before. And I think it's just probably being overworked and understaffed, and giving people the benefit of the doubt, but also being very responsive to making sure that those mistakes are not made. Maybe second guessing your escrow officers a little bit just to make sure everything's done accurately. There's also, with COVID, remember we are having now notaries online if you're out of state. Some lenders will not accept that, but they will accept a power of attorney, and that is signed by an online notary. Really kind of a backwards situation. But if you find out that you have a client who's out of the state, and the lender's requiring wet signatures on their loan, and they can't make it back for that, having a power of attorney who they can authorize by an online notary to do the wet signature on their behalf is something that some lenders are willing to accept. So I thought that was interesting too. With property management, there are COVID delays and price increases, and also a lot of delays right now in maintenance issues by tenants denying maintenance people access to their the property that they are renting. So the property manager who gave this report, she works out of Portland, so she's dealing with a lot of those sort of things. No rent increases in Portland. There's the eviction moratorium. And there was also a discussion, and I thought this was a really helpful thing to think about. You know that when you go through your real estate school that you can get a property manager's license that limits your work to just property management. But if you get a broker's license or a principal broker's license, you can also do property management. A lot of the issues that happen in real estate violations are tied in with property management, and a lot of them are tied up with brokers and principal brokers who are doing part-time property management. From my perspective, if I was going to jump into property management at this point in my career, I would need an entire refresher course on it. I would need to have someone really emphasize and reemphasize to me what are our rules and regulations regarding client trust accounts. What are all these things that we are required to do? I know you have to register a client trust account with the state. There's all kinds of things. And what they're thinking of doing is raising the bar on property management. And so the Oregon Association of Realtors is working with Multifamily Northwest on maybe coming up with a certification that brokers and principal brokers who happen to be doing property management on the side can get to say they have that added extra certification and that they have this refresher course. It's, I think, a very valuable tool to raise the bar and to let people be more responsive in property management. OAR is also working hard to develop a networking for commercial brokers. I sat in the initial meeting on that. That happened a few weeks ago. I think this is excellent. There was a lot of brainstorming with these people who are involved in commercial brokering across the state, saying, yeah, let's think about things like maybe even having a statewide website, a statewide MLS for commercial brokers in Oregon. A lot of great ideas, a lot of great things that was tossed out and discussed. Just being aware that OAR is looking to be more responsive to the needs of our commercial brokers. And then there's the legal case of Owen versus City of Portland, which they took on. This is a guy who's challenging the rent control in the City of Portland, and went to the Court of Appeals, and City of Portland won. Next step is they're taking it to the Supreme Court. So there you go with that. A political update, housing density, which is what we know that the current state legislature has been encouraging high density in urban areas to increase the opportunities. I mean, they want higher density. OAR is pushing instead for housing affordability to do ADUs in rural areas. And those are still two options that probably will be discussed upcoming state legislature, which will be in next year. The final thing was family leave with independent contractors, and that is something that they're talking about. Family leave for people who've had newborn babies. How the state legislature is looking at maybe making that an option even for independent contractors, but it's going to be done through taxes. That would be voluntary for the independent contractors to be contributing to, whereas employers, it will be mandatory. So that was just a really quick synopsis of all that. Any questions on any of those items or anything else? I am letting you guys all know we are doing our wine tasting and olive oil tasting event this afternoon, starting at 5 o'clock. It's 5 to 7. We're doing it outside at my house, so we're doing it with COVID distancing. We're trying to follow all the rules and regs about that. Emily's going to be sending everyone a follow-up email on it. When you come, I live in Mountain High. I live behind the pool, so I would recommend that you park at the pool parking. That's before you come in the gate off of Knott Road. Just pull into the pool parking there, and if that's full, just park on the street and then just walk across the common area to my backyard. You can easily see it. Hope you can make it. It should be a lot of fun. I've been looking forward to this. I know we were going to do this in March, and it's taken a while, but we're going to do it. And thanks, Cinda, for she is a professional wine tasting person, and she represents a winery out of California. So I'm looking forward to seeing Cinda at work with it all and having that opportunity to socialize with you guys too.
And bring a business card because I have a gift for a winning person.
Awesome. Thanks, Cinda.
Mm-hmm.
I have something to add. Thank you, Cinda. I'll see you tonight. It may follow on from working with difficulties in real estate, but at 11 o'clock this morning on OPB, on their show Here and Now, they are addressing discrimination in real estate. And they had commented on an appraisal that had come in super low on a house here in Oregon, and the sellers removed pictures of their family. They were a Black couple, and got a second appraisal that came in much higher. So it might be pretty interesting to give it a chance and listen to it, just to see some of the issues that may be happening out there.
Wow, that's interesting. Thanks, Jane.
You're welcome. Also, one more thing. I've got a friend coming into town next week that plays golf. I don't play golf. Does anybody have any recommendations as to a public golf course or availability of discounts or anything like that? Just let me know. Shoot me a text or email me. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Jane. Anyone else with anything?
I have a couple questions.
Yeah.
One, do you happen to know how many agents there are in Central Oregon? And my second question is, are people still using the COVID addendum?
Using the what addendum?
The COVID addendum.
Yes. I still see a lot of deals written with the COVID addendum. I do see that. And our actual numbers locally, I believe it was 1,200, 1,300. I can get you the actual figure, Pauline. I can ask where we are locally.
I can too. I just wondered if you happen to know. Yeah.
No, actually, that was more the figure in Bend. I think in Central Oregon, there's closer to 2,000.
I know there used to be 2,000, and
yeah, that's Central Oregon MLS. You know, with our shared data, our data sharing with Southern Oregon, I know we're dealing with over 4,000 total in our Flex system. But I'll double check.
I can ask too. Okay, thanks.
Anything else, guys? Okay, if not, thank you so much for attending today. Good discussion. If you have questions on anything, want to follow up, feel free to contact me. I'll have this recording done and I will send it out to everybody if you want to review anything again. Okay, thanks so much.